The model presented in Noam Chomsky's seminal 1965 work, Aspects of the Theory of Syntax, is most fundamentally related to the standard theory of transformational generative grammar, often referred interchangeably as the aspects model. This framework revolutionized linguistics by proposing that every sentence has a deep structure, an abstract representation generated by phrase structure rules that contains the essential semantic relations, and a surface structure, the final form of the sentence as spoken or written, which is derived from the deep structure via syntactic transformations. Other options represent historical evolution of Chomsky's theories, beginning with extended standard theory (EST), which modifies the original model by recognizing that surface structure also contributes to semantic interpretation, particularly for aspects like codification, focus, and a necessity not accounted for by the original standard theory. This was followed by the revised extended standard theory in the mid to late 1970s, a transitional phase that introduced concepts like generalized movement, move alpha, and the use of trace theory to mark the original position of moved elements, which preserved structural information for interpretation. Finally, government and binding theory, introduced in 1980s, marked a major paradigm shift away from rule-based systems to principles and parameters framework, proposing that universal set of innate principles along with a limited number of language-specific parameters govern all human languages. Indeclinable, and indeclinable is a word in grammar. One has that does not change form regardless of the grammatical function, case, number, gender, and tense, unlike declinable words such as nouns, adjectives, or verbs which takes various endings or inflections, and indeclinable remains constant. These words often serve as adverbs, preposition, conjunction, interjection, and their fixed form makes them distinct from the core inflecting part of the speech. For example, in English, the word often is indeclinable as it stays the same in all contexts. I see it often, they come often, this happens often. An indeclinable word is in grammar is one that does not change the form regardless of the grammatical function, case, number, gender, and tense, unlike declinable words such as noun, adjective, verbs, which take various endings, inflections, and indeclinable remains constant. These words often serve as adverbs, preposition, or conjunction, interjection. Their fixed form makes them distinct from the core inflecting parts of speech. For example, in English, the word often is indeclinable as it stays the same in all contexts. I see it often, they come often, this happens often. The correct option is tense, tense, and test. This is not a standard diagnostic test used in pragmatics to distinguish between different types of inferred meanings such as presupposition, assertion, implication, and the meaning derived from speech acts. The established and crucial tests for differentiating these phenomena include the negation test, also known as P cancellation test or test of constancy under negation, which is the most definitive way to identify a presupposition as it remains true even when the main sentence is negated. The conjunction test with and is a form of cancellation test used to distinguish between presupposition which cannot be cancelled and conversational implications which can be cancelled. The variation of speech act test is another means of testing presupposition, checking if the presupposition holds even when the sentence is turned into a question or command. The 10 sentence test, however, has no standard role in this specific area of pragmatic differentiation. The correct answers is both 1 and 2 are true. Assertion 1, although incomplete, is in the image. It is likely true as it relates to the general phonological principle of sound change, that a process of sound strengthening a lenition's opposite, like a fricative becoming a stop, often has sound weakening lenition counterpart. Assertion 2 is definitely true. The process of lenition or sound weakening often involves a reduction in articulatory effort, and a common manifestation is a change where stops, which involve a complete closure, or affricates, which begin with a stop, change into fricatives, which involve a partial turbulent closure. A classic example of this sound weakening is the historical change in Spanish, where a word initial Latin for a fricative weakened to a weaker fricative, and was eventually lost in many cases, as seen in Latin farina becoming Spanish harina, flour. Similarly, this parentization of a stop, such as Similarly, this parentization of a stop, such as a voiced stop, ba becoming a voiced fricative, becoming vowels. Voiced fricative between vowels is a clear example of this process. Stop becoming a voiced stop, voiced fricative between vowels is a clear example of this process. The correct option, grammar translation method, identifies the language teaching approach most criticized for focusing on teaching about the language rather than teaching the language itself. This method was dominated foreign language instruction from the 19th to mid 20th century, centered instruction around the explicit teaching of grammatical rules and the rote memorization of vocabulary lists. Classroom activities primarily involved translating classic literary texts from target language into the native language and vice versa, often focusing on prescriptive grammar and complex sentence structures. Consequently, students typically learned the rules of the language, for example, the conjugation of verbs or the declension of nouns, and could analyze texts, but they were generally unable to use the language for basic communication, speaking, or listening, leading to criticism that it produced scholars of the language rather than competent speakers. The correct option, place name, is the definition of a toponym. A toponym is a proper noun that designates a geographical place or feature, derived from the Greek word topos, meaning place, and onoma, meaning name. The study of toponyms falls under the branch of linguistics called toponymy, a subdivision of onomastics. The study of names, these place names such as London, Mount Everest, Pacific Ocean, often reveal historical, cultural, or linguistic information about the area, sometimes reflecting the original landscape. For example, Oxford meaning Ford for oxen, or the people who settled there. The term is purely descriptive of the word's referent, which is geographical location, distinguishing it from concepts related to meaning, uh, sense relation, discourse, conversation, or linguistic fields, semantics and pragmatics.